Hi, it's Katrina! From the remains of a horned demon to a secret underground maze of horrors, here are 10 of the most mysterious and scary archaeological discoveries. Number 10. Horned humans. Let's take a look at the skull of a horned human, shall we? It was allegedly uncovered sometime in the 1800s from a burial mound in Pennsylvania. What's more, it wasn't the only one. When the burial mound was uncovered, excavators actually unearthed several skeletons that were abnormally tall, standing at over 7 feet. They were supposedly dated back to 1200 AD. Each of the skeletons also boasted a set of horns sticking out above their eyebrows. It's been reported that the skeletons were immediately sent to the American Investigating Museum in Philadelphia to be properly analyzed. However, shortly after being sent to the museum, these skeletons have vanished, never to be seen again. While giants and horned humans are not really mainstream archaeology, is it possible for humans to have horns? Believe it or not, it may all come down to fingernails. There have actually been cases in the past of people growing horns either from their forehead or even from the back of their head. Naturalist Caspari Bartholini mentioned a man with a 12-inch horn growing from his head in his book about anatomy. A man named Wang was called a human unicorn because he had a giant horn. These cases have typically been linked to a type of genetic mishap in which the protein keratin that forms hair and fingernails grows in a sort of concretion out of a person's head. It's unknown why this happens, but it has been recorded throughout history. As for the case of the horned skulls, it's hard to say who they were or what might have caused this since the skeletons are missing. Or if they ever existed in the first place. Number 9. The Limb Pit. When talking about mysterious and scary archaeological discoveries, the limb pit definitely leans more to the side of scary. Scientists first uncovered this pit of human bones at a former Civil War battlefield in Virginia, but instead of finding complete skeletons, scientists uncovered the amputated limbs of Union soldiers. Experts say that this is the very first limb pit ever to be found, and it's shining a light on some of the overlooked aspects of the Civil War in the United States. Specifically, the horrifying aftermath of a battle, the agony of what the survivors had to go through, and the brutal jobs of the combat surgeons. These bones were first discovered in 2014 when a utility crew was working at the Manassas National Battlefield Park. After 3 days of fighting, Union forces retreated, leaving behind thousands of dying and wounded soldiers on the battlefield. It wasn't until 3 days later that surgeons arrived to help. At first, archaeologists thought that they had found a few pieces of bone, but as more and more were found, it eventually turned into a full archaeological dig. At the time this story was reported, the research team had found 11 limbs, 10 of them being leg bones and 1 of them being an arm bone. Each limb showed extensive wounds and clean amputation cuts. The doctors would have likely had to make this special pit for burying limbs due to the overwhelming number of injuries. Number 8. The Mystery of Herxheim. The Mystery of Herxheim is incredibly disturbing. The story takes us back to the year 5300 BC in southwest Germany. Herxheim was a quiet Stone Age settlement. The houses were basic, the small village had a rudimentary grasp on farming, and the village was in a pretty safe place from invaders. But somewhere around 4950 BC, the entire village disappeared. The village became a ghost town, leaving nothing behind but huge piles of bones and shattered pottery. Nowadays, researchers hypothesize that the entire village could have been cannibalized. The theory came up after a 2009 archaeological dig at this village, where researchers unearthed a mass grave. There were at least 500 human remains inside, and archaeologists expect to uncover twice that amount. The bones belonged to men, women, and children, and there were pottery fragments lying between the victims' ribs. Most of the bones showed tool marks as if the flesh had been removed, and larger bones had been broken to get at the marrow inside. Even the skulls were shattered in such a way that the brains could be easily extracted. Because it happened so long ago, researchers don't have a clear vision of what exactly went down, but it is possible that some kind of cannibal invasion descended upon the town, and it resulted in everyone being eaten. Was there a tribe of lost cannibals floating around Europe? Archaeologists think it is much more likely that the place was of significant religious importance, and maybe people were traveling there to be ritually sacrificed. After all, in the Stone Age, getting over 1,000 people to make the pilgrimage to this place from all over Europe would have been no easy feat. Now the place is known as the Village of Cannibals. Number 7. The Hanging Coffins. Maybe the last thing anyone wants to discover while wandering through a jungle is a collection of coffins nailed to a cliff. But while it might seem strange to us, members of the local mountain Igorot tribe in the north of the Philippines have been practicing this tradition for centuries. Rather than bury their dead, they place them in coffins and then nail them to the side of a cliff high above the ground. This prevents their ancestors from getting scavenged and raises them as close to the sky as possible. Not only are there hanging coffins in the Philippines, but they have also been discovered throughout central China. They are lined up on cliffs, balanced on wooden stakes, or stacked up high in caves. The oldest found in Fujian date back 3,000 years, but there is no clear reason why this practice started. One of the most recent finds was in 2015, when an archaeological survey discovered 131 hanging coffins in the central province of Hubei. The coffins were discovered inside man-made caves in a cliff 50 meters wide and 100 meters high. When CNN reported this archaeological discovery in 2017, experts still weren't sure how ancient people managed to transport the coffin, body, and funerary object to the cliff caves. That would have weighed hundreds of pounds. Inside are bones, sometimes from several people, and fragments of clothing and pottery. It's possible the bodies were buried first and then the bones brought to the coffins later. Sky burials have also been found in Mongolia and Tibet, although the practice is a little different. Now archaeologists are trying to protect the cultural relics from being looted. Even though they are so high off the ground, things have started to disappear. Number 6. Hand of God. Near Hadrian's Wall in the north of England, a mysterious bronze hand from Roman times has been discovered, known as the Hand of God. The hand was discovered at a site called Vindolanda, an ancient fort from the days when Rome ruled modern-day England. The hand was actually found discarded in a ditch near a temple that had presumably been devoted to worshipping Jupiter. There is much we don't know about the cult of Jupiter, but its mysterious influence apparently stretched far and wide. The director of excavations at the Vindolanda site says that experts believe the cult was somehow associated with the weather and metalworking. The cult was open to both men and women, as well as different social strata, which made it extremely popular during the 3rd century, a time in Roman Britain where there was much conflict and war. The small bronze hand was found with a socket at the bottom and something missing from its palm. It's likely that the hand would have held a small effigy of Jupiter Dolicanus, often shown riding a bull and grasping an axe and a lightning bolt. Similar hands have been discovered from Britain all the way to Syria. Number 5. Neolithic horrors. Mass graves in Germany and Austria have revealed that prehistoric farmers were pretty hardcore. Not only did the original farming communities grow crops, but they also engaged in systematic violence 7,000 years ago. The skeletons discovered inside one of the mass graves showed that 26 victims had their shin bones broken, many of them children, before they had their bodies dumped into the pit. This discovery was described in the journal Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers from Germany are claiming that the savage way in which the human remains were treated indicates that there was no special care taken for the burial or arrangement, indicating that it was an attack. Historians have often wondered what ancient people were like so long ago when they transitioned from hunter-gatherers into farmers. They built houses and made pottery, but did they also engage in war or other kinds of violence? It looks like the answer is yes. The German researchers believe that the perpetrators of the violence were probably from a neighboring village or villages who were trying to massacre their neighbors to perhaps get rid of the competition. Number 4. Secret tunnel maze. This discovery was made by archaeologists thanks to advanced robots. Small robots designed by Stanford University uncovered a secret tunnel maze hiding beneath an elaborate temple in Peru. The unexpected finding was made with the help of archaeologists from the US and Peru beneath the Chavin de Huántar temple. The temple was built as a religious and administrative center 3,000 years ago in the mountains of western Peru. Using the tiny robots equipped with a system of cameras and lights to explore deep underground, the researchers uncovered ceramic fragments, human skeletons, and 35 interlinked subterranean tunnels that date back between 1200 and 200 BC. The priests at the temple used drugs, noise, and the manipulation of light to carry out flamboyant rituals that would make the pilgrims who journeyed there believe that they had higher powers. With the new discovery of these tunnels, researchers are learning more about how the priests operated and just what exactly was going on in their rituals. There is still more that the archaeologists need to discover, but according to the director of the project from Stanford University, this is the most important discovery in Peru in the last 50 years. Not only is it a wonder that they dug the tunnels in the first place, but the fact that they were able to use light and sound to influence people so long ago must have made quite the impression. Number 3. The Vampire Grave. It looks like vampires once roamed Bulgaria. At least that appears to be the case, based on the findings archaeologists made of a peculiar skeleton. A newly uncovered grave has revealed a skeleton that had likely fallen victim to the vampire hysteria that crippled Eastern Europe until, let's be honest, relatively recently. The skeleton was from the 13th century, and according to the report from Smithsonian Magazine, the remains had belonged to a man in his 40s. Rather than just leave him alone in death, an iron rod had been smashed through his chest just like what you see in the movies. Why did they do this to him? Well, it was to keep his corpse from rising from the grave and attacking the living, right? The archaeologist in charge of the dig told news outlets that this is yet another example of a medieval anti-vampire ritual. Keep in mind that this was a time in Europe's history when people were literally terrified of vampires bursting out of coffins to satisfy their craving for blood. To stop this from happening, people just like this unfortunate fellow got staked in the heart to keep them sleeping. To date, there have been at least 100 graves found in the Slavic region of Europe alone with stakes driven through their bodies. Number 2. Anthropomorphic ruins. A massive pyramid found in China is full of mysterious designs. The pyramid was found along with a huge city, each about 4,000 years old. And while the ancient city and the ancient pyramid are mysterious enough by themselves, what's really odd is that researchers have found anthropomorphic designs decorating the exterior of the pyramid. These designs are part animal, part human, and it's unsure why they were drawn in the first place or what they mean. There have also been the remains of human sacrifices discovered in the area, including 6 pits containing decapitated human heads. For a long time, archaeologists have assumed that the area, known as Shimao, was part of the Great Wall of China. It wasn't until very recently that new archaeological excavations took place and revealed that the pyramid and the surrounding city are actually far older than the Great Wall of China. It's now recognized as one of the most ancient places in the country, rich with confusing artifacts, puzzling anthropomorphic symbols, and one of the largest and most complex pyramid structures outside of Africa. Unfortunately, the truth of this ancient place may continue to elude experts in the years to come. Number 1. Murder Island. Murder Island doesn't really sound like somewhere you want to spend your next vacation. The island is located off the west coast of Australia, and archaeologists have uncovered a gruesome secret. Researchers discovered a small grave holding the remains of people who had likely belonged to a Dutch merchant vessel that was shipwrecked in 1629. Believe it or not, the 5 individuals found in the grave probably had it easy. Researchers believe that they were the few who escaped the rather disturbing fate that befell their fellow shipmates. At the time of the Dutch shipwreck, there would have been about 300 survivors, but since they ended up stranded on a place called Beacon Island, since dubbed Murder Island, stress ran pretty high. They were far from home, stranded with little food and little resources. In the months following the shipwreck, a horrible mutiny unfolded and they all began to turn on each other. Historians believe that more than 100 of the survivors were murdered. The most recent grave was found by an international team led by a professor from the University of Western Australia. The team figures that the 5 people were probably buried before anyone was murdered. It likely happened immediately after the shipwreck, since the bodies were buried in an organized fashion that suggests that they were respected. It was sometime after this burial that Murder Island turned into a bloodbath. There have been other grave sites discovered on the island before, but they were messy and hastily dug, suggesting something nefarious had taken place. Thanks for watching! Which of these mysterious discoveries did you find the most horrifying? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up for more like this. See you next time! Bye!